Auzubillahiminash-shaytanir-rajim. Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. The topic of my discussion today is seven C's. Seven C's in particular are a part of communication skills which you need to take into consideration if you're going to write an essay or an application, letter, or an article or anything. Seven C's in particular are seven words starting with the alphabet C. Many of my students have sent me messages that they are unable to understand my English. So I'm trying to speak as slow as possible so that you might not miss anything out of my lecture. So I'll go with the first C, which is clarity. Your messages, whenever you're going to write anything, you have to be as clear as possible. Because if you're not clear, the people who are reading your letter or anything, they will not be able to understand you. You have to bear in mind one thing, that a reader does not have the access to a writer's mind. Whatever you have in mind, it does not mean that a person who's going to read your letter also knows about that. So you have to be as clear as possible and explain the minutest details. You cannot miss any point, anything, assuming that this is an ordinary thing and a person who is going to read my letter must know it already. So this is not the case. Many people who do not belong to your profession will not be able to understand what you're writing. So you'll have to be as clear as possible. Second thing is that your messages should not be ambiguous or contradictory statements should not be there. The reader should not have to read between the lines to get your message. Message should be clear enough. Otherwise, it will deteriorate the quality of your writing and the people will not be very pleased. Whosoever is reading your letter or application or anything, they will not be pleased with you. And you will have to get rid of the unnecessary details because they're not important. Right? The second point is concise. Concise means that to say something in a fewer words rather than using too many words in your writings. Your writings should be concise enough, compact and concise. They do not have like whosoever is going to read your letter, application, or anything, they do not have enough time to read pages and pages. So you have to be as specific as possible. Stick to the main point, don't go away from the focus of attention, and at the same time, don't waste the time of the person who's reading your writing. Right? And apart from that, you shouldn't use certain words such as, I should give a few examples. Say, for example, I've seen a number of students, even many people, who, for the sake of increasing the numbers or increasing the kind of the words, they write down irrelevant words or they add or, and then they write down something like two ideas in other words, say for example, in other words, and they write down the same thing in different words. That shouldn't be the case. You shouldn't go for this because that will again lead you nowhere. And you should avoid using words like you see or definitely, because whenever you're reading something, whenever you're writing something, the English should be different from the English whenever you're speaking something. The spoken English is different from the written English. So you have to be very careful about that. The third thing is concrete. You should have a clear picture of the things you're going to write. You should not kind of, you should take into consideration all the facts that you're going to discuss in your application letter, essay, or anything. You have to take into consideration before you're going to write them down on the paper. Think about what you're going to tell and how you're going to tell it. You should have a clear picture. Otherwise, you will lose focus and the people will not be very pleased with you again. The fourth point is correct. Your English should be grammatically correct. And you should have a good command on English as well as punctuation. Because if you do not have a good command on English, you will write incorrect English and the message will not be conveyed. If the message is not conveyed, the people will not be able to understand you. And that is the most important thing, because if the people will not be able to understand you, they will not give you whatever you want. So you have to be you have to pay more attention to your grammar, because that's obviously the most important thing. Because eventually you have to speak correct English as well as write correct English. And that you will only be able to get with constant practice. I'm going to deliver lectures on grammar as well. And for that reason, and for that in particular, I've asked my students to write down essays, and I'll correct those essays one by one before you. And then you will be able to learn easily by taking into consideration the correction whatsoever I will give in my lectures. Again, you have to correct the spellings, check the spellings as well as the dates and time and whatever. Spellings of the names as well, because that's very important. You have to check them. Fifth point is coherent. That there should be a kind of coherence in your thoughts. You shouldn't be writing irrelevant material or details. Whatever you're going to discuss in the subject, whatever the subject is, you have to stick to that. You cannot go beyond that. Because if you go beyond that, then people certainly will lose interest in your writing. So you have to stick to the point. Where is the subject? That's the question which my professor, when I was in England, he used to ask me if even I wrote down a few sentences which were not kind of relevant but very important. They were very important, but they were not relevant to the topic, the main topic of discussion. My professor used to cut them down and used to say, where is the subject? So you have to stick to the point. You cannot go beyond that. Again, sixth point is complete. Your message should be complete. Your sentences should be complete. You cannot write down an incomplete letter. So what you need to do is you have to check it time and again and again to find out whatever you've written there. And it would be better if you ask one of your colleagues or anybody to read it out and try to find out what's written in there, because that person who will read your letter or whatever you've written, he will be a new person. He will not know what you've written, and then he will be able to understand a few things, and he might not be able to understand a few things which you have not described clearly. That will be easy for you to find out whatever you have missed in that particular writing that you have given to him. And please check also that if you've written all the relevant information that you need to tell other person who is going to kind of read it. If you have given all the necessary information to him. And courteous. You should be courteous. Courtesy is a very important aspect if you're going to uh, write an application or letter. You should be courteous enough, because if you're not courteous, people will not oblige you. There shouldn't be any kind of insulting behavior or ambiguous sneers, or say for example a satire or something. You cannot just go telling people whatever is in your heart. Even if you're angry with somebody, you cannot just be impolite to that particular person. You have to take into consideration that particular thing, that in letters you have to skip certain words. You cannot use bad words in your letter or application or anything you're going to write. So you have to choose polite words, and that will create a good impression. You do not need to be too humble. Say, for example, I've seen a number of people who write down, most respectfully and humbly, I beg to state that, whatever. So you can just write down, like, respected sir, it is stated, or sir, with due respect, it is stated. That's polite enough. You do not need to be too humble to show kind of that you're too humble. That's not needed. What you need to do is you need to be polite enough, and that's it. So whenever you write anything, say for example if you're writing an essay or anything, or a letter, an application, write down these points and check these points, taking into consideration these points. Check if you have taken in mind these particular things, or you have neglected one or two of the things there which are given in the seven C's. So in that way, your writing will create a better impression on the reader. All right, and that's the end of this particular uh, topic. Now I'd like to tell you one thing, that please don't forget to like my videos. Like them now, and then please take some time and like them, and then afterwards I'd like to tell you that please promote this channel, because this channel I've already made for the people to raise funds for the poor people. So please help me in that. And don't forget to like my videos, because most of the students, they just see the videos and they don't like. And I need more likes to promote this channel. And if you do not understand anything, you're welcome. You can ask as many questions as you wish in the comment section below, and I'll try to make another video in which I'll try to answer the questions which you've asked. And or if you do not understand anything, some of the students sent me messages that they cannot understand my English or my accent. They find it very difficult. And at the same time, if I'm going to deliver lectures on philosophy, or say for example mythology or anything, I will have to go for Urdu, because philosophy is not for everybody and you will not be able to understand philosophical arguments or concepts. Though later I might again uh, deliver lectures on philosophy in English as well, but in the beginning I would like to stick with Urdu, because that's a complicated subject, and unless you get the most important ideas, you will not be able to understand philosophy very easily. And for that, it's a very important subject, philosophy. And if you go for this, then you will realize what I'm talking about. With this, thank you very much. Allah Hafiz.